Hello, and welcome back to the Curriculum Hotspot Explainer series presented by the Science Office. In this video, we are going to review High School Standard LS 2-2. The standard states that we'll use mathematical representations to support and revise explanations based on evidence about factors affecting biodiversity and populations in ecosystems of different scales. Our clarification statement is examples of mathematical representations include finding the average, determining trends, and using graphical comparison of multiple sets of data. We do have an assessment boundary, and that is that our assessment is limited to provided data. So now we're going to unpack this standard and look at what students do need to know. Students need to know that ecosystems can exist in the same location on a variety of scales. So just by looking at this image, we can see diversity. It looks to be a tree stump on the edge of a clearing. There are trees that are likely home to a variety of animals. There's probably a variety of birds and bugs that live in the area. But if we focus on just the tree stump alone, there are a variety of species on a smaller scale: mosses, lichens, fungi, and even some microscopic decomposers. Obviously, this tree was cut down, which lowers the diversity of the larger ecosystem, but as time passes, the stump itself provides an environment all on its own for smaller organisms. All of the living things in the ecosystem interact, but on different scales. The next thing we really want students to know is that the populations and the number of organisms in an ecosystem vary as a function of the physical and biological dynamics of the ecosystem. Students should recognize a direct correlation between the biotic and abiotic factors of an ecosystem. For example, if we view the image again, we want students to recognize the climate in the desert is hot. There's a lack of water and therefore a lack of the producers that build the foundation of a biodiverse ecosystem. So the size of those populations in that particular ecosystem are limited in that the desert is lacking those resources. However, if we look at the forest is going to have a larger population size, more biodiversity due to the stream and the lush plant life, and probably a more temperate climate. Once students understand that ecosystems can exist in the same location on a variety of scales, and that populations vary as a function of the physical environment, they have the foundation for exploring and understanding relationships between species that interact within an ecosystem. They need to know that as one factor changes, other factors may change on both large and or small scales. This is where we're really going to tie in those mathematical representations. We're going to give the kids concrete examples where they're able to determine the trends. Use those graphs so the kids are able to look at it and say, when this change happens as a result. Maybe sometimes those changes are on a large scale or on a small scale, but we want to be able to give them multiple sets of data and have them draw conclusions from that. So now we're going to review some phenomena and some lesson examples to review this topic with students. So this video is one of my favorites for introducing this topic. If you've never seen it, it's very gross, but very fascinating. It's a great hook for the kids and really gets them thinking and really gets them talking. So the students are going to watch and discuss how the cordyceps fungus uses the other small organisms like the moths and the ants and the grasshoppers as a host for growth and reproduction. So the students will be able to discuss the positive and negative impacts of the fungus on ecosystem diversity, and they'll be able to understand how something on such a small scale, like a spore of a fungi, actually controls the population of these particular species, not letting one really get the upper hand on the other, and therefore contributing to ecosystem balance. So for this first resource example that we're going to share with you, we're really going to hit home on our performance expectation. We want to revise explanations based on evidence about factors affecting biodiversity and populations in ecosystems of different scales. So with this resource, it's a data nuggets resource. The students are going to analyze how the average tree size in a forest influences its susceptibility to mountain pine beetles. What's really great about this resource is that the activities are already scaffolded for you based on the needs of your students. Right here, we have graph type A that graph is already built for the students and they're able to just analyze and answer the questions. In graph type B, they have to build the graph themselves. And then in graph type C, they actually have to get the data from the research and build the graph themselves and do the analysis. So this is a very fruitful activity to help meet that performance expectation. The second resource example is a carrying capacity activity. The focus here would be on those mathematical representations in the exponential growth and eventually the max population size as a function of the physical environment. So, this is a great time to take students outside or to an open area like an auditorium lobby or the gym. The students will be running around and participating in physical activity, so you will need the space. The activity requires just a couple of materials, some cookie sheets, beans, a couple of spoons, a timer, but the students will watch and collect data as the population of the birds grow and then eventually level out as of the limiting factor of the amount of food comes into play. The third and final resource example that we're going to share is the Earth Observatory How Birds Respond to Extreme Weather article. So you could use this as an introduction of the components of the standard. You could use it as a homework activity. You could create some guided questions or use your favorite main idea graphic organizer that would help students identify and explain what the patterns are, what the trends are, what's happening with the data. But essentially, students are going to look at the temperature and the resulting bird migration, which is changing the biodiversity of that ecosystem. So that is all we have for this episode of the Curriculum Hotspot Explainer Series. Thank you so much for watching.